Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, the key to PMP exam success. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome back to the Project Management Prepcast. We are your career path to the PMP exam and I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. We are now ready to bring the team members onto our team. So let's take a look at the Acquire Project Team process. In this lesson, we discuss the following aspects of acquiring your project team: the project manager and how and when they, or rather we, are selected, what are pre-assigned resources and why do we have them, negotiation which you will need in order to build your project team, external resources that you might use when choosing project team members, and virtual project teams and the challenges and benefits of using them. We begin by looking at the knowledge area of project human resources, which according to the PMBOK guide includes the processes that organize, manage and lead the project team, which means we as project managers must be able to organize the resources, manage the resources, making them efficient, and also lead the project team to greater heights and effectiveness. And we do this by going through the 4 suggested processes from the PMBOK guide. First of all, we have to plan. We have to plan human resources management. This is the process of identifying and documenting project roles, responsibilities, required skills, reporting relationships, and creating a staffing management plan. Once we know how we will be managing our human resources, we can bring them onto the project. This process is called Acquire Project Team. It's the process of confirming human resource availability and obtaining the team that is necessary to complete our project activities. Now that everybody is on board, they may not have the necessary skills, so we need to develop our project team. This is the process of improving competencies, team member interactions, and overall team environment to enhance our project performance. But there's also an administrative part of managing your human resources, and this is in the process of Manage Project Team, the process of tracking team member performance, providing feedback, resolving issues, and managing team changes to optimize project performance. As you can see in this overview table, the first process of plan human resource management is obviously a planning process, and then develop and manage project team. They are both executing processes. But what is acquire your project team? What is going out and hiring people, interviewing people, talking to them, negotiating salaries with them, and bringing them onto the team? That's, of course, also an executing process. The main concept to understand is that this is the process where you bring your staff onto the project. You do this via a normal hiring process specific to your project. You're going to find the right people for the right positions on your project, and your primary results are the project staff assignments. Before we get going with the inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, let's just do a quick interlude here and look at ourselves, the project manager, because the project manager is part of the project team. So the Acquire Project Team process is an appropriate time to choose the project manager. The project manager should be named to the project as early as possible. And in most companies, this actually happens when the project charter is written. The name of the project manager should appear in the project charter so that you can assign the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities to the person who will be leading your project. So the process of Acquire Project Team really already begins as you are writing your project charter, because you're going to have to bring the project manager on board. When we look at the ITTO overview here from the PMBOK guide, I think the most important and actually also logical thing to note is that all of these are people oriented, really. It's no surprise we want to acquire the project team. So our inputs, our tools and techniques and our outputs, they all center around people and bringing people onto our project. And here are the inputs for this process. We have the Human Resources Management Plan, we have Enterprise Environmental Factors, and surprise, we also have Organizational Process Assets. One important note here, it's not unusual that you as the project manager don't really have much say at all about acquiring your project team, and the PMBOK guide actually acknowledges this in the opening paragraphs for this process. There could be collective bargaining agreements, subcontractors, internal and external reporting relationships, or a matrix organization that may affect the choice of team members. Our first input is the Human Resources Management Plan, and it contributes guidance for identifying, staffing, managing, and releasing the project's human resources. The plan includes roles and responsibilities that are required on our project, skills and competency levels that we need, project organizational charts that describe the reporting relationships on our project, and also the staffing management plan, including time periods or phases where staff is required, where staff is brought onto the project and staff is again removed from the project. Enterprise environmental factors are a required input because every company handles staff acquisition differently. For example, you may use internal and external resources, and you need to determine various factors in regards to these resources, like your organizational structure. Are you going to have dedicated or part-time project team members? Then you need to know the abilities and the experience of these resources so that you can make sure that you get the right person for the job. We're going to be interested in the location of our resources, because are we going to have a co-located project team, or are we going to have multiple separate locations around the world? And of course, we can't forget the administrative policies either, which may affect or govern outsourced resources for the project. Our final input to consider are the organizational process assets, and these include the company's documentation regarding human resources and project staffing, like standard policies such as normal work hours, corporate behavior standards, and so on, processes for hiring staff, onboarding, training, account setup, and so on, and procedures regarding human resources such as discussing benefits and company holidays. That's it already for the review of our inputs, so we're moving on to the tools and techniques. We're going to be a bit more in-depth here with the tools and techniques, and then, as you will see with the outputs, we're going to be very, very high level. But first of all, the inputs that we have are pre-assignment, negotiation, acquisition, virtual teams, and then also multi-criteria decision analysis. So let's jump into the details here, because the tools and techniques are really what makes this process come alive. Pre-assignment is the one tool and technique that you will definitely have come across if you have worked on projects where you were told that Joe or Susan would be working with you as a business analyst. Then you have come across pre-assigned resources. Reason for pre-assignments, they're quite varied. Maybe the customer was contractually promised that Joe would be working on this particular project. Maybe Susan is the only one who has the required expertise. Though not the ideal situation, we have to accept the fact that there will be people pre-assigned to our projects because they are the only ones available. For instance, if you need a representative of the QA department on your project, they will assign an available resource to your project. Your project may require resources from a particular location. For example, a local expert may be assigned to you. Or it could also be that assignments are defined within the project charter already, maybe because the sponsor has requested that. Negotiation is another important tool and technique in acquiring a project team. Some important things to remember when negotiating. First of all, don't take negotiating lightly. Your ability to negotiate properly and work with both functional and project managers to find a good working solution for everyone will increase your chances of being successful with your project. When dealing with functional managers in particular, you need to show them that your project will help them. Explain the benefits that the functional manager will get by assigning resources to your project. Remember to clearly communicate the time and responsibility that will be expected of the assigned resource. And knowing the benefits like good visibility for a department and the requirements for a resource allows the functional manager to make a good decision with regards to resources to use. But even if you have pre-assignments, you're probably going to have to identify and acquire some of your project team, which means you're going to have to negotiate with the following groups. You may have to negotiate with the functional managers for a resource to ensure that they can work on your project in the sought-after capacity and for the required effort and duration that is required by the project. Another group of people that you may have to negotiate with are other project managers and their teams. You may have to negotiate for scarce resources that everybody wants on their project, and this is going to be with other project managers. Good working relationships and the ability to find a consensus are extremely important at this point. And then we're also going to have to negotiate with external sources like vendors and contractors. And this is the area where you are definitely going to want to bring your own human resources department to the table. Your HR department can help you understand all the requirements that your organization may have when it comes to hiring external project resources. However, while HR is the specialist when it comes to hiring, you and your team are the specialists when it comes to evaluating the external resources. Make sure that you have clearly defined role descriptions that you compare the resources against. And here are some of the reasons why we even want to bring in external resources. Well, in-house resources are lacking the required skills, or we need to augment existing skills with external expertise. The in-house resources are unavailable. Perhaps they are committed already to another project, so we need to bring somebody in from outside of the company. We may be buying external technology that requires external resources for implementation and training, or we are subcontracting parts of the project to an external vendor. In all of these cases, the idea is to find someone external to help work on the project. The last one is slightly different. In this case, we are not hiring the people to come on to the project to perform a specific task. Instead, we subcontract a complete portion of the project to the subcontractor. But this also falls under the term of acquisition. And when you are subcontracting, you may be hiring people that are not living in your city or maybe not even on your continent. Such geographically or functionally distributed resources are what is known as a virtual team. Team members may not be physically co-located, but geographically dispersed. It may not be practical to travel to meet face to face. Team members may work different shifts. You can incorporate employees that work from their home offices, or you can allow projects where travel expenses would have been prohibitive in order to bring these people on. As you can see, reasons for virtual teams, they often center around where a perfect team member is actually physically located in the world, as well as the difference in the time zone. Furthermore, teams may be distributed because of the new realities that are facing our organizations, like organization-wide projects or initiatives, alliances with different organizations, some of which may be in other countries. There may be mergers or acquisitions going on in our company. Emerging markets in different geographic locations may force us to have virtual teams, or there may be a desire of many people and government organizations for telecommuting. I want to work from home. Can you accommodate this? Then there is the need to reduce cost. If people don't come into your office, well, you don't have to provide office space for them, and therefore it's a way of saving money. Or there is a need to reduce time to market or cycle time in general, which means increasing the velocity in business. You're going faster to the market, and you can do this if you have your team around the world, 20 people working in different time zones, and they're able to work 24 hours a day, so to speak, 7 days a week, because there's always somebody on the team awake. There's the sun shining outside where they live, and they can work on the product and they can bring it to the market much faster in this way. And of course, more and more today's businesses are able to connect virtually. And here is a short list of technologies that make virtual teams possible. Of course, we have modern broadband internet access. We have voice over internet protocol over IP, web conferencing, teleconferencing, video conferencing, virtual meetings, distance learning, online document management, desktop sharing, internet chat, email, electronic whiteboards, everything really that you have in the cloud. You may not be using all of these, but you should be aware that they exist and that they are available to facilitate virtual team cooperation. But there are also a number of challenges that virtual teams are facing. For example, most virtual methods, electronic methods of communication, are an average to poor medium for communication, which can lead to misunderstandings. You may feel isolated if you are the only team member on a large continent. That can affect geographically distributed team members quite a bit. Challenge of sharing knowledge is very common. How are we going to exchange all this data amongst each other? Then there is the cost of technology, which can be prohibitive depending on the project needs. We have the importance of communication planning, which is much increased because we have so many more distributed people. So we're going to have much more focus on that particular part of our project. Time of execution, resolution of issues can be longer than if you are all co-located in the same office and you can quickly come together. Just imagine if I have to send an email to you, you're asleep, you open it the next day, you answer, I'm asleep, I open it the next day. Things just take much longer. And let's not forget the cultural differences and the time zones, which add additional challenges when managing virtual teams. A major drawback of these virtual teams is, of course, the communications factor. Because you are using a virtual team, good communications become critically important. Accommodating different time zones, how to best share knowledge, and technology outages can all limit the effectiveness of virtual teams. So good communication practices cannot be overemphasized. Another technique is called the multi-criteria decision analysis, which can be employed in the team selection process. Here, a set of criteria are developed and then used to rate or score potential team members, with the idea being, of course, the highest scoring individuals are selected to be part of your team. The criteria is weighted to reflect the importance to the team. Some examples are that we look at the availability of a team member to work within the project constraints. We look at the cost of a team member to the project budget. Then the experience of team members to contribute and to help ensure project success is obviously just as important as their ability to do the work that is specified in our scope statement. The knowledge of the customer or organization, similar projects, and the subtle project nuances should also be considered. We need to know their skills to use project tools, implement project requirements, or train others on the project. We need to know their attitude that is required to work constructively with others. And lastly, we also have to consider international factors such as location, time, and their ability to communicate effectively. So you would rate each potential team member on these various factors, and again the idea would be the highest scoring individuals are then selected for your team. And finally, what do we get out of the acquire project team process? Well, obviously the outputs, and we're going to stay on a very high level here. You will be able to make project staff assignments once you are done with your pre-assignments, negotiation or acquisition. You can clearly define which resources will be fulfilling which role, create a project team directory, update your project organizational chart, and include these assigned resources into a project scheduling software and begin assigning tasks to them. While you are working on that, create or update resource availability calendars that will document the time during which each team member will be actually able to work on the project. You need to know when resources go on vacation or if they have any other scheduling conflicts. Just imagine if you're doing your final schedule and you didn't realize that Susan is scheduled to work on another project during a crucial time of your project. That would be a disaster. And our last outputs are updates. To be specific, in this case we are talking about updates to the Human Resources Management Plan, which is part of our overall project management plan. You originally created the Human Resources Management Plan making a lot of assumptions. Now that you know who will be filling which role, you may need to update that plan. People are maybe no longer working for you. They have been promoted, are maybe sick or are unavailable because of their changed workload. All of this information leads to updates in the Human Resources Management Plan. Let's review and begin by saying that this process is pretty much common sense. Acquire project team is the process where you bring your staff onto your project. You do this via negotiation or a normal hiring process. Your goal is to find the right people for the right position on your project. And of course, your primary output are the project staff assignments. And now let's test what you have learned with a PMP exam sample question that you may find in an online simulator. Try this one here. Fundamental to acquiring a project team is negotiating to obtain resources. Which of the following is the best approach to negotiate for a potential team member? Is it A, highlight the benefits of your project to the functional manager? Is it B, minimize the amount of time required of the resource? Is it maybe C, use politics to convince the manager? Or is it D, it's both choices A and B? I'll give you a few seconds here. The correct and at the same time very incorrect answer is D is correct. Both A and B in this particular sample exam question are correct. The best answer is D, highlighting the potential positive exposure of the project while minimizing the amount of time required of the team member will make a compelling argument to a resource to be included in the project. But why did I say that this is both the best and the worst answer? Well, it's because you will not find this type of answer on your real PMP exam. On the PMP exam, there are no such things as all of the above, none of the above, or both A and B are correct, or C and D are incorrect kind of answers. Each answer will be independent of the other three answers. So something like this here, both A and B are correct, is something that you will not find on the exam. So truly, this is actually a bad exam sample question, but we did it with a purpose in mind of telling you that you will not be seeing this kind of answer on the real PMP exam. And this concludes our look at the Acquire project team process. So it's time for Justine to say,
Good night, good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow.
And of course I say, until next time.